Hello, I'm Jim Miller. I'm here with Ron Bowers and Henry House. The FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. So there was a meeting with the county commissioners and the city council about a way to deal with abandoned properties that continue to show up on the tax rolls. Ron, what was that all about?
For years, there are properties that go to tax sale that have a tremendous amount of money owed on them tax-wise.
Now, tell me about tax sale for those who may not know.
Well, tax sales usually in June. It's the first Tuesday in June.
But your
tax sale
property
comes up
gets put on tax sale because you failed to pay
your taxes, and after repeated time of failing to pay, it goes in a tax sale. Where now it goes in a tax sale. And if you buy it, say Henry says, I'm going to buy a couple of these properties, he's got to wait. He doesn't have clear title to it till about 2 years. What the city and the county are looking at doing now, at the recommendation by the city, is saying all taxes would be kept back. The property could be sold. A new buyer would get the property. The lien of the property, of the taxes, would still retain with the original owner.
So previously, if
the new person buying it had to pay everything,
okay.
Where now that's being re-looked at, where the new buyer gets it and fixes it up and sells it, the old person that owned it still is liable to pay it.
So Henry, what I'm hearing is if you fail to pay your taxes, you lose the asset, but you keep the debt.
That's the way it sounds. But correct me if I'm wrong, but the premise behind a tax sale is to pay the taxes on the property. Now, I understand that the previous owner who had lost their property in the tax sale, I think it's an 18-month redemption period. It
Yes.
could be 24. But they have the opportunity. So that hinders a person doing any real renovation on that property until they have a free and clear lien.
No, not the way this is being done.
At present.
Yes.
At present, they really don't want to invest a lot of money until they actually have the clear title, because it could be redeemed for the value of the taxes.
So the previous owner can come back up to 2 years after and say, here's your money.
Now, the way it's structured now.
Plus whatever the additional premium was that the property sold for. So let's say the property had a $10,000 tax lien on it, and it was sold at auction for $50,000. That it would be a $50,000 to redeem that property. It pays the taxes off plus the additional $40,000 that the buyer put forward and whatever interest or usury that is attached to it. With this, the property tax is still going to say, oh, Joe Smith, didn't pay his taxes. He's going to still be responsible to pay the taxes, and all this money is going to be going to the county. Does it change? I didn't pick up. Did it change what the redemption period is for the person who lost their property in the tax period?
Well, they're going to pick each year the properties that are past that 2 years of redemption.
Okay.
So they're going to look at properties 10 years. I know properties on certain streets in town been vacant for 12 to 14 years. They're going to get those properties, and the owner of the property will still be liable to pay the taxes, but the property can be sold. A new person or developer can pick it up and develop the property.
So if a property has not, because every year there's a tax sale. If you don't pay your taxes for the given year, your property is at risk of being sold at the tax sale. So the way I understand what you're portraying, Ron, is a property hasn't been sold at the tax sale for the last 10 years, and now there's 10 years of back taxes. That's going to be the responsibility of the previous owner, and we could sell it for under the value of what the tax burden is on that property just to get it back
on
onto
the tax rolls.
Okay.
Yes. And plus, I talked today to Commissioner Mittelschmidt and said another thing you have to look at also is the amount of back utility bills. You also have to look at mechanics liens that could have been placed on the house or on the property because of other monies that's owed. So there's several different expenses that's going to have to be dealt with. They don't want the person that's going to buy it to be liable to pay it back. Then it's not a financial incentive to pick up all of these properties that need redevelopment.
So let me understand, and again, I didn't read this like Henry. There were some things that I didn't understand about the process, and we may have to wait till it's further along. But let's say that person X owes $50,000 in taxes, right?
That's
Back taxes.
a good bit, but let's say they did.
Okay, so let's say it's 50,000.
Okay.
So let's say the property, because I think one of the examples that was in the Herald Mail article suggested that some of the properties are actually worth less than what the tax lien is. So let's say that $50,000 in tax is owed. Let's say that the county, when they sell it for tax sale, gets $40,000 for the property, right? Does the previous homeowner, previous property owner, then owe $10,000 because that's the difference between
Well,
what
first of all, the new property owner is not going to pick up the past. They're going to start for the future.
I understand
Okay,
that.
so I don't know where your question's valid.
Well, the question is valid because
it's not.
Because previously,
Previously stays with the previous owner.
But
listen
under
to
the
me.
current
Hang on,
system.
Hang on. Previously, right now, if somebody owes $50,000,
Yes.
and if the property sells for $60,000, right? I assume that $50,000 that is covers the tax lien. Because so the previous owner owes nothing then, right? Because the property was sold, correct?
That's not how I'm looking at it. All taxes is waived from the new person paying it.
To
the
forget
old
about the new person who's paying it. When the county gets the money for the property, are they going to apply any of the money they got in sale of the asset?
Well, first of all, they're not going to pay more than the property's worth when the new person buys it. So it's going to be bought. You're thinking that it's going to be bought for. They haven't bought it in 10 years. Why are they going to buy it now?
Forget about the 10-year thing.
No, I can't forget about it. It's relevant.
Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Let's see if I can rephrase. So we have, and let's make it more realistic, $10,000, okay?
In tax debt.
In tax debt. Under the current system, if that property was bought for $50,000 at a tax sale, the current system takes $10,000 of that money and retires the tax burden on that property. The new owner retires the tax burden on that property. It doesn't carry over if the previous owner wants to redeem that. He has to pay that entire $50,000 plus a premium. Under the new proposed system, that $10,000 is not retired. $50,000 goes directly to the county coffers, and the previous
And
owner,
city.
or city, to county and or
City
city.
property.
Okay.
Forget about county, city government.
Okay. That $10,000 that was owed in property tax on that property to the county, city, whatever, has not been retired and is attached to the previous owner of that property, that they are still owing that on the books. Is that the way I interpreted the article?
I interpret the article that it's going to be a clear sale for the new person to buy it, which they're not going to pay 50 if that's what, because it's going.
If the property is worth
X amount of
100 and it's
years.
selling for 50, it's a good deal.
And so what they will do, from my understanding, talking with officials in the city and county, the person will get it with no liability going forward. All the liability stays back with the original buyer, original owner. Now, if there's money that is paid, I'm sure that money will go to relieve portions of prior debt, where it's a mechanics lien, utility lien, or whatever,
Tax lien.
or tax lien.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
You answered it. Now, Commissioner Baker had an interesting quote in the Herald Mail. He called the new process simple and fun. I'm not sure where he was going with that, but I thought that was an interesting quote. I think the fun part refers to that there are people out there that like to take old properties and rehab them, and that's kind of a side business for them. And I know several people, several friends actually, that do that, and it probably is fun for them. Wouldn't be fun for me, by the way.
You remember folks that bought those houses in Baltimore, the row houses for
Yeah.
$1?
Yeah,
Built them up?
right. Very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Yes.
And I see the same thing happen here, and I just think he wants to make sure, from what I read, that Commissioner Baker make it simple to get it done.
Okay.
Don't have a whole lot of regulations that's going to cause the project to blow up before it starts.
Well, the project in Baltimore is a little different. It wasn't on tax sale properties.
No.
It was property that the city claimed. And
After
after there was a deficiency of some sort, but it wasn't a tax sale as we think of tax sales within Washington County.
And these won't be tax sales as we know tax sales to be, because the liability is going to be on the owner, and the new person buying it is harmless on that tax.
Is there still a redemption period?
No.
So the redemption period will be waived if they go into this different classification of sale?
Yes.
Okay.
See, the 2 years now, you have 2 years. Well, the ones that they're talking about getting rid of is 8, 10, 12, 14 years.
Yeah, they've been on the tax sale year after year after year.
after
That's a
year.
good
Right.
point, Ron.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of the fun piece, again, I get that. The simple piece, I'm all about simplification, and I think Commissioner Baker is correct in that view. Is there precedent for this in other communities? Is this something unique to the city of Hagerstown, or do we know if there's other communities that have done this?
I think it's unique to our community here because obviously we're talking about it. I have to feel that, this isn't rocket science. It's been explored with other municipalities. I'm not sure where it was.
It's done in Dorchester County down Cambridge.
Okay.
So we have every expectation that it would hold up under a legal challenge.
I see no reason why it shouldn't hold up under a legal challenge, because they've foregone their rights when they didn't pay their taxes.
Okay, well, there are a lot of times when people forgo their rights and still win in court.
Well, that's true, and if whatever you do, somebody's going to sue for something.
Absolutely.
So you
No
have a
question
good
about
lawyer
that.
on staff, and you fight it, and you go from there.
Okay. All right, well, that's all the time we have on that one. Stay with us. When we come back from the break, a commissioner's recusal stalls a solar project here locally. We'll have that report when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. So Commissioner Meinl-Schmidt felt that he needed to recuse himself from a vote that had to do with a solar project at Wholesome, which is a local company. And in my mind, what he did was legitimate, and I applaud him for that effort. But I guess let's talk about that part first. Henry, what are your thoughts on, at what point is it appropriate for a commissioner to recuse themselves?
Well, if they have a financial stake, if you're putting a bid in, or if you intend to place a bid in on a county project, and you have a company that does contracting, then it may be appropriate for you to, step aside there. In this case, he's a financial advisor, and he's making recommendations on buy, sell, and I can see where it will potentially impact the value, probably not significantly, but could impact the value of this company that acquired the rights, because a previous company had the rights and they purchased the rights. I can see where it could have some impact. I can't imagine it have that much impact.
There's not as much of a direct line. Is that what you're saying?
And that's where I'm headed, is because he's made whether he's made a direct recommendation to buy this stock or not. Would you view that as inside knowledge because he voted on our project up or down?
Yeah. So Ron, I don't know about you, but in my mind, Commissioner Meinl-Schmidt, that gave him brownie points in my book. I like to see someone who does their homework and avoids, as we always hear, not just the problem, but the appearance of a problem.
Of impropriety.
Right, exactly. So, in my mind, he did the right thing. And what are your thoughts?
I don't know. He may have did the right thing for the wrong reason. I really have problems with these pilot programs, payment in lieu of taxes, especially on Wholesome Cement. Wholesome Cement is leasing the ground to somebody to build. Now, why would you lease your own ground for somebody to come in and build a solar array on your property? If you were going to lease the ground, why wouldn't the lease be payment back to Wholesome as a reduction for their their electrical amount of money? I've got a lot of problems with the way these pilots are coming out. The company bought in February from another company this right to do it, and there was no tax rebate or payment in lieu of tax on personal property. This is personal property, not real property. Wholesome is still paying taxes on real property to begin with. The personal property, which is like $2.9 million, their recommendation was $6,500 a megawatt for 35 years. The county's policy to date was like $6,000 a megawatt for 20 or 25 years.
25 years, I believe.
I really believe these pilot programs should be on a 5-year basis, and on a 5-year basis with renewable 5-year, 3 to 4 renewable 5-year terms to see how it's really working. I don't like this whole pilot program that has suddenly surfaced in Washington County when that's not what originally started with solar people. I was involved to let people know I was involved in a solar project, and being involved in a solar project, I've never heard one discussion of solar having a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes for the solar panels as personal property.
Okay, so I'm gonna back up for 2 seconds. And what you said there, and we had planned in this segment to talk about pilots, and I want to rekindle that discussion in just a minute. So your answer to the question was good. You just didn't answer my question specifically. If you were Court Meinl-Schmidt having a similar, and you were a commissioner having a similar financial connection, would you have recused yourself in this case? Do you
Absolutely.
think that was okay? So you think his action was appropriate?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now let me ask. I do want to rekindle the pilot.
I would be interested in the investors.
Yeah, I do want to rekindle the pilot program, but before we get away from that, let's talk again about Commissioner Meinl-Schmidt's actions. Is there a way? Is there an appeal or whatever that others can say? Well, we agree. There's a potential conflict here, but it's okay, because what we have now is we have a 2-2 tie, and this thing fails. Because, and clearly Commissioner Meinl-Schmidt stated for the record to the Herald Mail that he would have been for the proposal. So we, at some level, won the battle and lost the war, potentially. Is there an appeal method, or is there a way that he can, having disclosed that, I mean, is there a disclosure piece versus a recusal? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Can they come back and do it? It might come back to when they hold it and it's one of the people that voted against it's not there, and it could. Well, of course, if Wagner makes a motion, Meinl-Schmidt can't second it.
If he's recused.
If he's recused.
And
Klein can't second it
he's
unless
president.
Klein steps down and lets Baker, the vice president, be the president. Then he could do that and second the motion. Then it can come out still a 2-2 tie, but if Kiefer wouldn't be there, it could come out 2-1 and they could win. I still think there is room for some type of a compromise that they could come back and really get a handle on these pilots and on what they're doing, and not have them in there for 25 to 35 years, but have them 5-year renewable after 5 years. We don't know what it's going to be. And if that is going to be the justification for solar going forward, where they have to have a tax break, what advantage is that? And you'll go along later in the program when you talk about the 7 different projects in Frederick County.
Well, one of the beefs I have, okay, solar is a temporary job burst for the community. You're going to have the contractors come in, they're going to put up the mini solar farm, and they're going to go. They're not going to be Washington County employees. Even if they do have a solar company based in Washington County, they're going to go on to another project. It's not a perpetual thing. Wholesome can be, for lack of a better term, can be considered a concrete cornerstone of this community. They've been here for a long time under different names, but they've been here a long time. They employ about 100 people. They're not adding any more employees to their register.
At this point.
At this point for this task.
Right.
So,
but what they are doing is they're allowing a technology that arguably is going to create green energy, which is not a bad thing. Whether or not you believe in the greenhouse effect,
okay.
I don't think, I would hope no one could argue that the cleaner
Well, then why are you
energy.
going to lease your land? Goodwill, we put solar on our property. We didn't lease the land for them
If
to build
Wholesome
it.
would have come
business
as
dealing.
a company and said, listen, this is what we want to do with an area of our land, and they came and it wasn't being done as a leasehold to the other companies, because it was leased to one company, now they sold that right out to the company in question. To me, I would have a little bit different take because they are an employer within the community. The other one's not a regular employee and doesn't contribute to our tax rolls or anything, and we're talking about giving millions of dollars of tax discounts and rebates.
That's a valid point in my view. And Ron, from my perspective, why would you lease the land? It doesn't matter in terms of what you're trying to generate. It matters from a business deal standpoint.
How
It
do we
doesn't
know
matter.
that the energy is all going to be used by Wholesome?
We don't know that.
And
then why should we do it? Why
right
should
now we have reverse meters, and we have to sell the power up to the power company in order to bring it back. Probably in Wholesome being an industrial site that they are, they're still going to use more than what they produce.
And they're still going to pay taxes on the land that they lease out.
Right, but
So are they going to get money back from that company on the lease to make up for there's too much unknown in this whole endeavor with solar projects, and I never hear the answer.
So bottom line for this particular project, would you be for, if you were a commissioner, would you be for or against the project as it is currently
As it
proposed?
is currently right now, I'd be against the project, but I would be for the project once I had a chance to sit down, ask questions, and come up with new ways to find out how a lease would be done. I don't think the leases are appropriate. How do you go from a 35-year lease to a 20-year lease because they said, well, that's what the county's been doing when you just bought the property in February, and there was no discussion then about even needing a pilot? I just think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Henry, same question. If you were in that commissioner's chair voting on this proposal based on the information you have, would you be for it or against it?
the way it's currently proposed, I would be against it. The reason being is, one, I think the pilot program, if it grows and spurs community development and jobs within our local area, I would be in favor of that. This project does not do that on a long-term basis. Two, agreeing with Ron's point, I think they should be shorter terms that are subject to verification and renewal a period of 5 years to 10 years, because we don't know where the technology for solar is going to be in 10 years, and they likely are going to come back and say, well, we need more money.
Okay. So I would agree with the concerns that both of you have stated. However, I would, at the end of the day, vote for it. So I'm going to be the outside guy at this
You're
one.
not one of the investors, are you?
I am not one of the investors, no. All right, coming up next, the Council of Hagerstown is moving forward with the next phase of the baseball stadium study. We'll have that story after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. So the City Council approved this week to move forward with Phase 2 of the study for a new baseball stadium inside the city limits, specifically, I guess, at the Baltimore Street location. We had Councilman Alshire on a couple of weeks ago. We had Councilwoman Keller and Councilwoman McIntyre before that. All have expressed their opinion. We're hoping to have our mayor and
Councilman Metzner.
Councilman Metzner on. Henry, where are you on this Phase 2? Do you think it should move forward?
Well, I'm more looking at the long game than the short game. I'm afraid, because when we had Councilman Alshire in here, they already had a thick study book Only thing we had to do was do an update, which maybe we're looking at less than a month to do an update off of that thing. And that might add a potential yes vote. Right now, I think he's probably in the no category, because a valid site that he has, or in his opinion, that he has, is not being given the due diligence. Looking at, and Councilman Metzner's, says, let's just get this thing voted on, because we have elections coming up here and we want to have it done before we get into the campaigning cycle. This is the third rail in Hagerstown politics.
Yeah.
Is the baseball stadium. Bully to them that are in favor of the baseball stadium, and bully to those who are opposed to the baseball stadium, because both sides feel that the other side's wrong. It's a no-win. It's good that we're moving forward, but I still, personally, I don't feel that the downtown site that is identified in its current proposed manner is the best site that we could put it at.
So do you think that the site that Kristen and others have suggested is the best site, or are you for some other option?
I'm not for studying this to infinity, and that's where we're at.
We've already passed that.
We've already passed that point. I think the site that Kristen is supporting should be definitely weighed in. I can't say I'm in favor of that site over the downtown, but we have to look at overall development for the community, and the city council has more details on that than I'm privy to.
Ron, where are you on this?
A lot of dynamics shifted since Councilman Alshire was on the program. Number one, he said that Lou Metzner was totally against the project. So if Lou Metzner was totally against it, he wants to get it to a vote. So the dynamics shifted. The dynamics shifted to where Councilwoman Keller kind of agreed with where Councilman Alshire wanted to go, to look more at the East End problem, where Councilman Heffernan, Councilwoman Shelley McIntyre, and Lou Metzner looked at it at a different way to proceed to the next. I still cannot understand why we can't see, with that $300,000 grant that the state has offered us going forward, why we don't have something to debate and look at. And I hold the mayor as to the point that, Mayor, the business that you're in, he is able to show the product that he sells. We need to see what is the product that we're actually looking at, and to be able to look at it placed on Prospect and Baltimore, placed out where it is. How can it all fit in? How can what Councilwomen McIntyre and Keller, how can what they wanted with that boutique type music, how can it fit together, and how can we see it with all the money that's out there that's available? And I still have heard nothing. At what point does the Washington County Convention and Visitors Bureau say we're going to put 2% of new rooms coming in, all new rooms that come in after so many, all of those rooms going forward, all that money goes into reducing the debt and financing this whole thing. There is so many things that could be happening that's just not happening. Again, is this whole thing paralysis by analysis?
Okay. And, they said, well, we need to get it done now because Annapolis will be in session in early January. Ron, you've dealt with that. You've dealt with having to get information in to get it down to Annapolis. If we spend another 30 days, in the paralysis of analysis, and then 90 days to develop it, we're going to be past that deadline to really get it on the agenda down in Annapolis, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so is a month going to make any difference at this point? I mean, because I just said 120 days. So if we do it in 90 days, are we going to be able to get it on the radar screen for Annapolis to know? Or can we work that in cooperation? Hey, we're doing this. We work with our local legislators. They start to get the drums cranked up and start banging. Listen, Hagerstown needs a ball stadium to a multi-use venue, let me correct that, to help build our local economy.
And how will the $300,000 that Delegate Quarterman get into the mix? How is that going to affect the credibility of what it is we're looking to build? It should really affect it because there's money there that the local people don't have to pay unless it's a match.
Right.
On what's this thing going to look like, and that's what I throw that out to the mayor. Mayor, at what point do you come forward with what is this going to look like? Because we've got the money there to do it.
But shouldn't we have have the council, if they're truly want to spearhead this moving forward, and assign different tasks? Listen, we want you to concentrate on how we're going to do the finance package. We want you to focus on what the planning is going to be, and start to get all that information instead of just waiting for, one switch to flick on, and then we go to the next switch. Can't we do multiple things at one time? Even with, because the ballpark's going to be a ballpark. You know what amenities you're going to look. You have an idea of how many seats you're going to want to include.
But a ballpark is a ballpark, but the kind of a ballpark
what we're
is
talking
another
about.
venue, which to me is something else. They play soccer games in Yankee Stadium. Don't tell me that you can't play other games in a field that's going to be on Summit Avenue in Hagerstown, Maryland. There's something the matter with why we can't do more with a venue in downtown Hagerstown.
But the discussion we had back on Summit Avenue years ago, we had talked about having a facility large enough to house a football field.
Yes.
Okay, so those specs are somewhere. Okay, we need to go into the catacombs and dust them off and say, okay, well, this is at least our starting point. But I don't see that being offered out to the public. Maybe it's something that's been discussed within the city council and in private meetings, but it's not something that's been brought up.
Paralysis by analysis.
Is a paralysis by analysis to stranglehold this project so it doesn't go forward?
Maybe in the interim period because they don't want to deal with it in an election year.
Joe?
I think the Councilman Ashar made some very strong arguments. I think that Councilwoman Keller and McIntyre had some very strong arguments. I'm not the expert on this. I never will be. I never want to be. But at some point, we've got to come together and do something, or we just need to let this drop once and for all. Because, again, this has been, and I said this in a previous episode, I've heard about this for 30 years now. And it's time to either do something or not do something.
But in the long haul, with what Delegate Quarterman's brought in at $300,000, and with all of the University of Maryland systems of USMH, with what the Hager Five's doing, with what Barbara Ingram's doing, with what the Maryland Theater's doing, with what the Stube is doing, what the library already did, and what the museum has already done, that center of town still needs a major project. There's got to be, in the framework of a stadium / multi-purpose facility, there's got to be something there, and I just don't see the champion behind it that's willing to stick their neck out to bring to the table what it's going to look like and what it can accomplish.
Well, so I think that Bob Brucci has championed this for many years.
Well, he hasn't gotten it done.
He hasn't
so
gotten
at what
it done.
point do you bring in something new? Because I understand we could probably question Alshire a little bit more about what we had going forward. But I think the mayor owes us some of the explanation. And I think he'll be on the program, and we can find out what is the real plans. Is there something that we're not seeing, that the press isn't picking up, or the public's not picking up, or that we don't understand? There's got to be an issue.
So this particular study is going to examine geology. It's going to deal in no way with financing. They know that the project is estimated to cost $45 million, but I assume geology and other factors could weigh into that.
How do you know what a project's going to be when you don't know what the project is?
Well, I think somebody's got an educated guess.
But if we had done the project back 10 years ago, it would cost.
2012.
Yeah,
it was $40 million.
I thought we were 30 million back then.
Yeah.
We were 30
Well, 30
million.
million plus a parking deck, which was 10.
And we need a parking deck. What do we do when we build a parking deck? Do we put businesses in it that can help retire the debt? No.
They do in the city.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But do we do it here? No.
My point, though, is this. There's another phase to this, which is phase 3, which would evaluate the financing piece.
Well, that's one of the first things you need, how you're going to get money to do it before you decide you're going to build it. That's why it's better to start at the end and say, hey, folks, we got the money.
I think that of all of the concerns that I've had, the financing piece has been the one that I think the bell that has rung the loudest.
Then do it first.
So, okay, that's all we have on that one. Again, we hope to have Councilman Heffernan and Mayor Brucci on here in the near future to talk about this, so we have everyone's opinion who's voting on this or spearheading this. So hopefully that'll happen soon. But coming up next, we have Fast Five. Stay with us. Welcome back and welcome to Fast Five, where our 3 panelists talk about 5 topics in 7 short minutes. Let's get started. Speaking of solar, Ron, 7 Frederick facilities now solar powered. What say you?
You know, I saw where County Executive Jan Gardner said that it could save, should save from $250,000 to $500,000 in 25 years. That's not a whole lot.
No, it's not.
You know, and it could, and that's just being pulled out. Or 20% of what they had in Frederick County that it was going to be done. But I do applaud them because they're going to run transit buses that are electric. And you've got your electric car, Henry, which does mean a lot. And I look at what we did at Goodwill with solar. It's paying all of our buildings. In Maryland, it pays all of our energy costs for our buildings. We didn't even put the money into it. We even got a new roof out of it, a new standing seam metal roof, and got all of the key places, structural makeup to ensure that the full roof square footage could be used clear out to the edge. The more I'm hearing of solar and the way it's going on, I look at what MS Johnson and a few, not MS Johnson, but Johnson Controls. What Johnson Controls did years ago, how they were going to save the schools money, and whatever happened to those programs. They got started and just kind of dissipated, and you never heard any more about it. Is solar going to be the same way? Or if I saw the solar farm in Frederick, it looks really great. So I applaud Frederick County for what they're doing, how they're doing it. It just seems like they're not getting their bang for their buck that I think they would be getting. And I hear nothing of a pilot program over there.
Well, as a counterpoint on that, would it be wise, because ideally is like flat roof buildings are the perfect location to put solar panels up. Instead of taking up real estate, you could put them up on the buildings. Would it be wise to almost go through and say, you know, if you're building a flat roof building over X number of square feet, we're going to mandate that you have some type of renewable energy on property? And, you know, I know that we haven't gotten that far.
You're a Republican, right?
I am a Republican, yes. But
did you just suggest
That's socialism, isn't
Did you just suggest a mandate from the government to?
well, imagine that.
Wow.
Well, I mean, if we're talking solar power, because that's the only way it's going to be adopted.
Mark this down.
Okay, that's the only way it's going to be adopted. But it's a very slow return. Solar power is a very slow return, typically on smaller projects. You need, like what you have with Goodwill. It's a much larger scale project than what would typically be experienced. And I think that's the difference with the number that Jan Gardner mentioned in Frederick County versus what you are experiencing at the Goodwill.
And look at the acreage of the Trammell Crow's new project out on the corner of Showalter Road and Pennsylvania Avenue. There's 1.2 million to 1,600,000 square feet building that's going to be under roof that you could have had solar on.
Yeah.
And
there are solar companies that want to put the panels up. And it's at a low cost because they're getting the rebates on it.
You know, the other thing.
So there's really not, the mandate really is fictitious in the fact that it's going, you have solar companies that want to put it out because they're going to make money off of selling the energy back to Potomac Edison. And it's not going to be a major expense to the person who's building, save, making sure that they have the proper infrastructure on the ceiling or the roof.
And if you look at the cost of land in Washington County, far cheaper than Frederick County, Montgomery County, Baltimore County, or any of those other counties to the east of us.
But we're also not changing the water management on the site because we're not adding impenetrable surfaces that the solar panel could potentially introduce. You already have if it's going on existing finished area, you're covered.
Yes.
All right. Uruguay and Venezuela have issued travel warnings to the U.S. following our recent mass shootings. Henry, what say you?
Well, I'm happy because I know Venezuela and Uruguay are a large part of the tourism trade in the United States.
There you go.
We're going to suffer immensely. Not. Okay?
Ron?
I pretty much agree with what he says. I mean, somebody was looking for their 15 minutes of fame and decided to come out and cut up Albuquerque and Detroit and Baltimore and make an issue out of it, when in fact, do we have problems here with hate crimes and things like that? Yes. They're going to have their effect. I don't know of any place people stop going to in the world because of hate crimes. So I see it as just a comment that their director of tourism said that to probably get somebody's attention.
Yeah, so if you're in Uruguay and you want to find a place, go vacation in Venezuela because you'll really appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, Greg Snook, who now is the head of CHIEF, which is the Washington County Industrial Foundation, will head a new task force assembled by Governor Hogan about, guess what? Solar. Ron?
I talked to Greg about it just a week ago, and the governor's asked him to head up that force. That's going to be a tough task force. That's going to be a task force that I sat on locating a power plant when I did it for Schaefer and Glendenning, and we thought we had the perfect place to build a power plant. Gee, many Christmas, by the time we got it done, the arrows and darts and things that were thrown at us, it was unbelievable. He's got one difficult task to be able to pull through on how this is going to, where they can be located, how many can be located. You're going to deal with wind, you're going to deal with solar. So you have all of those issues, and you're going to have the geese and the ducks with wind and those fans on the eastern shore and the different birds and things up here. And then you have the solar panels. Look at the debate we're having now. He's got one tremendous task, but I think if anybody can help have a soothing, guiding hand, Greg will be able to do it.
All right. Henry?
I agree with what Ron's saying.
Well, that was easy. All right. Boy Scouts refer 120 allegations of sexual abuse to law enforcement. Ron?
I read that story and was absolutely shocked. They said 120 was handed in. Well, it sounded like there's thousands. How did this ever get to be to a point that it is with the Boy Scouts of America? It sounded like somebody wrote a story that had a vendetta against the Boy Scouts of some kind, and they were doing everything they could do to destroy them.
Do you think that's the case?
I would hope it wouldn't be, but I didn't like the tone of the story at all.
All right. Henry?
Well, I think the number is probably underreported.
They always are.
Yeah.
It's
it's tragic on multiple levels. And I will give credit to the Boy Scouts for attempting now to deal with something that has been probably a known issue, but they are now trying to get out in front and deal with the situation that's at hand.
But they're years old, and people say that on the Me Too
and they
movement, that why did they wait 30 years?
And I understand that, but we also have the argument about certain religious institutions have battled this and done the same thing of trying to cover up for years too. So the Boy Scouts they're stepping to the plate, and hopefully it's not going to repair the damage that's been done.
Let's rephrase,
Okay.
Rephrase, trying to cover up to dealt with it internally.
Yes.
Or not dealt with it internally, as the case may be.
Explain what you just said.
Well, what I'm saying is I have not seen any evidence that the religious organization in question covered anything up. I think that they tried to deal with things internally.
Where were you looking?
I have not seen that adjudicated. So yeah.
How often do you pay everything off and pay out billions of dollars if you're not guilty?
But we are becoming the issues are becoming more out in the open for us to deal with, and we're constantly getting barraged with these things.
Well, I don't.
The group that I stated, I think they did some things internally, and they did investigations internally, and they tried to mitigate the issues as best as they could, but it became too much for them to administer in-house.
It is, in my humble opinion, it should never be handled in-house.
But no, we didn't talk about any specific.
No, I get that, but you destroy children's lives with that, period.
The children's lives are destroyed from what they did.
Right. I agreed.
Look at Penn State.
No argument, Ron. Okay, next topic. Fencer and hammer thrower kneel and raise fist for anthem at the Pan Am Games, which happened several weeks ago. Henry, what say you?
Well, I felt the same way with the U.S. women's national team when those actions were taken. If you're going to represent your nation, when you signed on to do that, then you should show respect to the nation that sends you to the games. If you want to make a public statement about what you perceive as oppression, or
do it on your own time.
Please do it on your own time. Call all the media in. I'm sure they'll be happy to bring the cameras and set up in a press room, and they can provide them that recourse. But when you're out representing a nation, and I think you should do every effort to represent the country that you're out for.
Ron?
To me, patriotism is more than kneeling and more in the fist. And I really think the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America needs to show the same kind of respect to the nations of the world, to the different organizations of this country, and to all those people. So before I even comment about what I think of the fencer and the hammer thrower, I think the Commander-in-Chief needs to come in to check as well.
All right, we find
I did see the answer on that one.
Okay. All right, that's all for Fast Five. Stay with us when we come back. Thumbs up, thumbs down. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Welcome to Thumbs Up and Thumbs Down, where our panelists get to talk a little bit about what's on their mind for this week. Ron, what say you?
A big thumbs up to the county and the city of Hagerstown for coming together, trying to figure out a way to get some of the properties that are in disrepair, that the taxes haven't been paid and they've been for a long period of time, coming together to waive the taxes and the utility fees to allow a new person, developer, to come in, or individual to come in and build and not have to pay for that money that's owed on those properties to make it a valuable option for development.
All right. Any thumbs down?
No thumbs down.
No thumbs down. Henry.
Okay. This is a litlittle bit on the national politics scene. Joe Biden, the darling of the Democrat Party up until recent weeks. Guys, stop beating him up. I mean, it's funny that I'm coming to the defense of, a Democratic presidential, candidate, but we're making fun for this guy is traveling how many miles, and visiting how many states during a day, and he gets where he's located off by one state. Okay, at least he knew what time zone he was in, or at least we think he did. You're going to have gaffes. He's been known as a gaffe machine, but we're beating the poor guy up, and now even the press community that wanted him all of a sudden is turning on him. It's like people are going to make mistakes. It's a long way away, and don't pick of him because of he has experience. So that's my thumbs down is how we are handling, candidates out there in the public forum. All of a sudden, whatever the flavor of the day is who we're getting behind. And I know Donald Trump isn't Ron's flavor, but, someday he may get behind him on maybe one subject or two.
Or 5 or 6.
Exactly. But, as a community, I don't want to see anyone browbeat like that, and I just think it's you're beating up a target because you don't have anything better to say right now.
All right, and I have only a thumbs up, and that is for all of the educators in our county who, for whatever reason, I'm friends with many educators on social media, and these last couple of weeks I've seen them all posting pictures of what they're doing in their classrooms and how they're preparing for school and all of the great things they're doing to make sure that our children, the next generation of Washington County people, have a good educational year. And I think hats off to them. Whoever thought that teaching was a 9-month-a-year job, I don't think has ever tried it, because I know from having teachers in the family and from being friends with others that those who love it, it consumes them all year long to make sure that they do the right thing by our children. So thumbs up to them. That's all the time we have tonight. We hope you will like us on Facebook. We hope you'll follow us on Twitter. We hope you will send your feedback to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That's feedback@theflipsidetv.com. And most importantly, we hope you will join us again next week for another visit to the Flip Side. Good night.